Alright, so before we dive in, I just want to give a little note to say that I recognize all black women are not straight and all black women are not middle class. It just so happens that the purview of this video is going to be middle class, straight black women, not trying to be exclusive, just, telling you up front before we dive in. Okay, so y'all remember back when the This Is America video came out, and there was this kind of fake controversy about Donald Glover and the fact that he is now super pro-black, but he has children with a woman who is not black. That's apparently his partner, whom we never see. And I call it a fake controversy because I actually don't know how far these discussions get beyond social media. And also because I'm pretty sure that if you are a black person, you recognize that there are a ton of pro-black men historically who have partnered non-black women. We know that's a thing. So there are a couple of different strains of commentary on this issue. One of them is black women going way out of their way to say, we don't care, date whoever you want, it doesn't matter. And then the other one is black men telling us that we have a double standard about black men dating non-black women versus how we view black women who date non-black men. And I wanted to take some time to address it because even though we put black men dating non-black women and black women dating non-black men on equal plane, they're not the same. So I also have to say that according to the census data that we have, the vast majority of black men are married to black women. But of new marriages, 1 in 4 black men who get married, which is already a pretty small number, marry non-black women. And black men are 2 to 3 times more likely than black women to date and marry out. So I remember back in 2010, Jill Scott faced a lot of backlash because she wrote an essay for Essence about some of the uneasiness she feels when she sees a successful black man partnered with a non-black woman. Here's what she wrote. My new friend is handsome, African-American, intelligent, and seemingly wealthy. He's an athlete, loves his mama, and is happily married to a white woman. I admit when I saw his wedding ring, I privately hoped, but something in me just knew he didn't marry a sister. Although my guess hit the mark when my friend told me his wife was indeed Caucasian, I felt my spirit wince. I didn't immediately understand it. My face read happy for you. My body showed no reaction to my inner pinch, but the sting was there, quiet like a mosquito under a summer dress. Jill is kind of a good writer, right? So even though it's really easy to critique Jill for this stance, it's actually not super uncommon. And if you really dig into it, it's pretty understandable. Because historically, white womanhood has been placed on a pedestal in white supremacist society. White women were deemed genteel and feminine and demure and worthy of protection, whereas black womanhood was constructed in the racist imagination as being the opposite of that. And white women were situated as the beauty ideal. And because beauty is a commodity in a society where so much of our life outcomes are determined by what men desire or what they find attractive, being closer to the beauty ideal means that you have more access to resources and, yes, to high quality men. And I'm not making this up, there's so much data on this. The closer you are to the beauty ideal, the more likely you are to have a high status partner. So if you have lighter skin, that's the case. If you have a thinner body, that's the case. A slimmer nose. This is real. Black women want to be loved and doted on and cared for, but we also want to be in stable partnerships. And that's where some of that resentment creeps in. So when black women are upset by seeing a black man with a white woman in particular, we're thinking about the ways that white womanhood has been used to terrorize our community historically and in present day. But we're also thinking about scarcity. I just read this paper by 2 sociologists, Cohen and Pepin. They found that in major metropolitan areas, there are more unmarried white men than unmarried white women. But in those same areas, there are more unmarried black women than black men. So yeah, there's gonna be some tension. The frustrations are real. I remember that stuff really bubbling up for me when I was watching the season of The Bachelorette with Rachel Lindsay, the first black bachelorette, and she was on this one-on-one date with a black man named Will. And their conversation about his dating life was painfully familiar.
But I feel like I really don't know much about the man that's sitting in front of me right now. Tell me what type of girl you like. Like, what do you look for in a relationship? Like, what are you attracted to?
Honestly, I've typically, dated white girls.
Typically,
for most
or
of my
only?
life. No, not only.
Okay.
Just mostly. I grew up in a predominantly white, neighborhood area, and so that's what was available to me. In college, kind of the same thing. So that was, the pool that I was kind of working with.
I mean, I grew up the same way, and I wouldn't say that I dated predominantly non-black people.
Yeah.
I actually have predominantly dated black people.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, clearly I'm open to everyone at this point, but and I always have been. But me being like I told you, I pretty much grew up the same way you did, and I don't know. I didn't have that. I mean, no.
Very, very similar, upbringings, but very different
to
paths.
very different reactions to it. Yeah, I'm trying to think.
Personally, I don't feel a lot of animosity toward white women, but a lot of black women do. So there's another layer. So because I'm in my late 20s, which is a time when a lot of people get married for the first time, I've been doing a lot of reading on marriage and love and partnership and race. And I came across this book by Ralph Richard Banks. He is a law professor at Stanford. He wrote a book back in 2011 called Is Marriage for White People? So the whole premise of the book is that black women need to start dating and marrying out for our own good, but also for the good of the black community. So I'll say that I was compelled by that thesis, but I had some concerns because I'm a pro-black woman. In my mind, I imagine myself marrying a black man, and I don't have any desire to change that. But he's actually making some really compelling points, so let's dive into them. So Banks lays out who black women are partnering and who we aren't.
Higher achieving women are more likely than they've ever been to marry lower achieving men. Right? So more than half of college educated black wives have a less educated husband. That's another striking statistic, right? So you can think of college educated women, about 50% of them are married to a guy who didn't graduate from college. This is among African Americans. 50% of black women are married to a guy who didn't graduate from college. But it's also true that among whites, women are about 4, 5, 6 times as likely as they were 30 or 40 years ago to earn more than their husbands. Right? 30 or 40 years ago, in 1970, I think, say there were only 2 or 3% of wives who earned more than their husbands. Now it's 25%. So it's about 1/4. So again, trends in the same direction, but more extreme among African Americans than among other groups. So that's one development. The other development, so black women lead in a sense. They're at the front end of the decline in marriage and the front end of the marrying less educated or lower earning men. But they trail in another development, and that's with respect to interracial marriage. And this is the puzzle that really pulled me throughout the book to try to figure this out. Black women have the smallest group of men within their race to marry. Black women have the smallest group of men within their race to marry, right? Because of incarceration, educational underachievement, economic failures on the part of black men. Yet they're also the least likely to marry someone of another race. Right? Only about 10%, actually less than 10% of black women, even looking at recent marriages, will marry someone of a different race. Whereas for black men, it's between 2 and 3 times as much as that. So black men are between 2 and 3 times as likely to marry someone of another race as black women. Asian Americans and Latinos are also more than 3 times as likely as black women to marry outside their race. So black women simply are, in terms of their intimate lives, the most segregated group in the nation.
And he argues that these patterns exist in large part because we are socialized to be loyal to black men and black communities.
We encourage in all sorts of subtle ways, one might even say coerce in all sorts of ways, black women to remain with black men. Interracial relationships are less stigmatized now generally throughout society. But the strongest stigma that remains applies to relationships with black women. I've talked to black women even since writing the book. Black women who have white husbands, say, who have concerns about putting their spouse's picture in their office who have concerns about putting their spouse's picture on their website, especially when these are women who are race identified, right? So they identify themselves as strong black women who are, down for the people. And there's this ever-present sort of accusation that, if you're down for the people, you don't partner with the man who's not one of the people.
Well, is that different for black men, though?
Well, that's one of the ironies here. Actually, there are a lot of ironies here, is that, so it is different than black men and women do feel differently about that. And in part, I argue this is basically a set of what someone calls sexist assumptions that were intensified during the civil rights movement when women were given the pressure for sustaining the family, nurturing the group, raising the next generation. And this is something that women of all groups might feel, but for black women it's been especially intense, in part because black women are doing so much better than black men. So there was a story I don't mention in the book because didn't want to identify individuals, but there's a very prominent African American and one that a woman relayed this story to me of a very prominent African American talking to her when she was in college, and basically she had a white boyfriend, and this very prominent black man just told her, "You can't do that. You're getting your degree. You can't leave brothers behind." And then for this person, this is just an offhand comment. You can't leave brothers behind. Come on. And this really had an effect on this woman, right? Because here's someone who you respect, who you look up to, who's giving you a sense of how you should structure your life. And I think we give black women that sense all the time, that their obligation is to form a strong black family, partner with black men.
And then he lays out why black women choosing to date and marry out is actually good for black people and black communities.
If black women are concerned about African American marriages, the best thing that they could do to bolster marriage among African Americans would actually be to open their options to men of other races. Right? So it's the paradox there that by considering interracial relationships, they actually bolster relationships within the race, right? And the reason that is because part of the problem when you have the skewed gender ratio is that the group that's in short supply has a lot of power. So because black men are scarce, frankly, black men have a lot more power than black women do in relationships, because black men have a lot more options than black women do. Right, so lots of women means lots of options for men, few men means few options for women. And that shapes the relationship. And this is not only true among African Americans, this is true generally, right? We have researchers who've looked at gender ratios on college campuses because, again, women are the majority in college now. And when you look at college campuses, you find that there are campuses that vary dramatically in their gender ratios, right? Some are 50-50, or even 55-45 men, and others are 65-35 women. And some researchers have looked at that and concluded that the gender ratio on campus has a pretty strong influence on the type of relationships that people have on those campuses. So when men are in short supply, say when they're 35% of the population and women are 65%, that means men have more power because they have more options. And if they have more power, they can dictate the type of relationships that occur. And so what sort of relationships do we think men might want versus what women might want? And it just turns out that the men in the relationship, in the campuses where the men are in short supply, researchers have found that there tend to be fewer boyfriend-girlfriend relationships, fewer long-term monogamous relationships, so and so right there.
And low-key, he's making a feminist argument about upsetting the balance of power.
If this power disparity between black men and women is the problem, then it might seem that the best thing black women could do is to increase their own power in their relationships. And the only way they can increase their own power vis-a-vis black men is to expand their options and open themselves to relationships with other men. So if they do that, it's kind of, to be blunt, it kind of means, well, if you're in a relationship with the guy, you're a woman, and this gets me in trouble too. If you're in a relationship with the guy and he knows and you know that you don't have a lot of options outside of that relationship, he's actually not going to treat you as well as he might if he knew that you could leave. Because there are other things you could do, right? And if you had better options, then he has the incentive to treat you better. And If he has the incentive to treat you better, it might also mean that the black woman would more be in a position to, as a friend says, be the deal maker in the relationship, rather than simply the deal taker. To actually be able to get the relationship that she wants, rather than settle for the relationship that the man wants.
This is a great question.
Is it fair to ask black women to sacrifice their own happiness on the altar, as it were, of black men's struggles? And
what? Okay,
I think not.
He's arguing for romantic self-preservation.
I actually am asking black women to give up the good fight, because
Give up the good
hasn't
fight?
been successful. The fight has not been successful. This is what a friend of mine, Carolyn Edgar, calls a Negro Improvement Project, which is what a lot of black women undertake, and often the results are not so great. So the strategy has been counterproductive. It doesn't help African Americans for us to have black men and black women locked in bad relationships and raising children in households where the parents quarrel and ultimately divorce. That's not a win for anyone.
But he also mentions other reasons why black women might be hesitant to date outside of our community. It's not just about loyalty.
Black women told me time and again that they didn't want to have to explain to a man who wasn't black all the things they did with their hair. One woman said she dated an Asian man, and he asked her one night as she was putting on a scarf before bed, he looked at her and he said, "What are you doing?" And she looked at him and said, knowing this was a problem, she said, "Hon, let's have a little talk." She explained, "I cover my hair at night every night." To his puzzled why, she responded, "Because if I don't, it's all over my head and I don't know what to do with it." He understood and he was empathetic. But for this woman and for many others, just the thought of having the hair conversation leaves them tired.
And you can substitute that hair discussion for like 30 other discussions about blackness and black people and black culture.
The best available research, right? We have relates to internet dating studies, Match.com and so forth. And in all those studies, it is true that there's some portion of white men or non-black men who are not interested in dating black women. So that's true, right? People are paying attention to race, and black women are not at the top of the list. But it's also true, frankly, that black men are not at the top of anybody's list either, based on these same internet dating studies, right? And black men outmarry a lot more than black women do. So even after we take away the people who are not interested in dating black women, there are still, by any measure, and based on any study, there are still more non-black men who are interested in black women than there are black women. There are more non-black men who are interested in black women than there are black women. This is in part because black women are a small part of the population. Non-black men are a big part of the population, right? Not only whites, but Asians and Latinos and Middle Easterners and people from South America, and I mean all over the world.
So you're saying there's a huge pool, really?
Huge pool. People have come here from all over the world. We have this mix. In places like New York, we have this huge mix of peoples, and most of them are not black. And a lot of those men are very interested in black women because they think that there are a lot of desirable qualities about black women. And one little known tidbit, since we have time here, is that a lot has been made of an OkCupid study that I talk about in the book, and it's received an extraordinary amount of attention, right? And the media take on the study, and what the researchers take on the study was that this shows that non-black men are not interested in black women, because, or white men. Actually, they said white men are not interested in black women because white men responded less frequently than they should have, based on the compatibility score the website calculates. But what the write-ups of that study never mentioned was that, in fact, there were lots of other groups also part of the study. Asian Americans, Latinos, Middle Easterners, and those groups actually responded to black women more frequently than did white men. And some of those groups responded to black women more frequently than did black men. They responded to black women more frequently than
What
did black men.
groups were those?
Well, we can go talk about it in the book.
Now, I'll say that after going through that book and all of his talks on YouTube, I came away being a little bit more open to interracial dating. Now, I'm not all the way there, but the door is ajar. I'm not interested in being fetishized, and I'm not interested in doing all that teaching, but I am interested in that healthy, happy, committed partnership. So yeah, but I have to note that this book was written in 2011. That means it was before our current social justice moment, before Black Lives Matter. So that probably changes things a bit. I bet if he came out with this today, there would be crazy amounts of hostility. And I also have to say that a lot of Banks's argument rests on what's best for children. So according to the data that he presents, children fare best in married two-parent homes. And because I don't actually want children, that's not at the top of my list of priorities, I probably feel more comfortable than most waiting for a black male partner. But if you're a black woman and your biological clock is ticking and you don't want to have to support your partner, then yeah, I understand why this would be appealing. For the longest time I've said that your partner is a reflection of your politics. I still 100% believe that. But I also recognize that everybody don't want to be a race warrior. Everybody doesn't want to put their politics ahead of every single other facet of their life. And if you don't want to do that, okay, like, you got it. Get you an Asian boo, or a white boo, or a Latino boo. It's cool. I genuinely understand it so much more now. I'm going to be so much less judgmental of black women doing whatever they want to do in their romantic lives. Go for it. And that's not a double standard. That's about recognizing the historical construction of black women as undesirable partners, and also recognizing that the pool of marriageable black men is small. So yeah, girl, if you in love, I support it. I'm officially on board. Hi guys, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you so much. I've added a new patrons only podcast on our Patreon, so sign up if you want to have access to that and other exclusive content. You get merch, you get reading lists. It's super lit over there. Or help us continue this work with a one-time donation. If you're a black woman and you want to come hang out with me and other black women, join us at Black Girls Gather. We have dates across the country: New York, Boston, LA, Houston, Charlotte, more dates to come. Visit blackgirlsgather.org. It's going to be so much fun. Cannot wait to come hang out with you guys. That's all I got. We did it again. Bye.